Hey, how's it going? This is Dan from modular.dev, and we're going to continue on today with what we were talking about last time, and that's learning HTML and web development for somebody that's never done it before. So if that's you and you haven't checked out the first video, I recommend you check that out. Otherwise, let's keep going and learning about images today. So last time we talked about adding headers and paragraphs on our page and how to change the look of them. If you recall, there was H1, and we could put hello world or whatever we wanted our header to be, and then we could put in some paragraph text. And that was that's pretty much what we learned last time. We could style this by using a style tag or by using a CSS file that we linked in our page header. But if we go ahead and run this, you'll see right now all it says is hello world and some paragraph text. So that's what we learned last time, and we kind of got used to using the developer tools a little bit too. So when you're in Google Chrome, you can inspect and you can kind of see what's going on in the developer tools using the network panel and things like that. So that's all we went over last time. So if you want to check that out, make sure you do so. But like I said, today we're going to go over images. So let's get started. The first thing you should know about images is where to get them, because you can run into a lot of problems if you are using copyrighted images. So one place that I like to go is Pixabay. They have a lot of free images that you can use, and they also have, some paid ones too. So if you see one that you really like and it's not free, you can pay them for it. And another one that I also like to use is Unsplash. So Pixabay and Unsplash are both free photos. So definitely use those. And make sure you understand what you're doing when you go with these. So like, let's say for example you wanted this image here. You would probably want to read this Pixabay license just to make sure that you know what is allowed and what's not allowed. So you can't sell somebody else's photo as if it was your own and that type of thing. So make sure you read that and understand that any place that you go, whether it's Pixabay or Unsplash or some other kind of place like Adobe Stock, make sure you understand their license. What you definitely cannot do is just do a Google search, find an image, and just use that image. Most likely that image is copyrighted and you're going to get into a good deal of trouble. So make sure you do a little bit of research first, and if you have any questions about which places are legit, go ahead and just leave me a comment in the comment sections below, and I'll just let you know if I've heard of them, or if not, I can help you look into it. But okay, we're going to use Pixabay for this one. And so when you come here, you're just going to want to find an image. A good deal of these are free. So, you'd find one that you want and hit free download. Now, if you want to download the highest quality version, which is what I would recommend, you're going to have to create an account through them. But if you don't care about that, or if you just want a preview of them, you can download one of the lower quality ones for free. Well, they're free no matter what, but you don't have to have an account through them. So then you just hit download, and you'll see that it comes down here. And when you do that, it will say, say thanks to the image author. You have the option to donate if you want, and you can also put a credit to this person on your website, which is appreciated, definitely. But it's really up to you as far as if you do that or not. So I've already gone ahead and downloaded some images just to save a little bit of time. I'll go ahead now and show you how to actually put these images onto your website. So I'm going to get rid of this paragraph for now. And what you do is you put a tag, and it's just like any other tag, but it's IMG. IMG stands for image. And inside the image tag, you put the source of the image. So in this case, maybe I want these mountains here, and normally you're going to do something like this, where you have an end image or like an end tag, but image is actually one of the few HTML elements that you don't do that. And that's because there's really nothing that you could put inside the tags anyways. So you end it with a slash at the end. And this is the most basic way of adding an image to your site. So let's go ahead and run this. And you know what? Instead of choosing this every time, I'll show you a little bit of a shortcut. If you go to the Run tab on the left side of Visual Studio Code, you can click this Create a Launch.json file. And I'm going to choose Chrome here. And that way, I don't have to choose Chrome every time. It will remember it. So anyway, run without debugging. And now you'll see we still have our Hello World header, but now we have this humongous image of these mountains. So the first thing obviously we want to do is make it so it's not quite so large. There's a few different ways to do that. By default, the browser is going to show the image in the size that the image is. So one thing you could do is just resize the image. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to do that. I like to use a website called Squoosh. It's made by Google. And basically what happens is, I'll just drag this one in here because I have it. You can put the image in here and you can resize it. You know, this one was 1920 pixels. You can resize it to maybe 1000 pixels, and it will you can maintain the aspect ratio too, and it will resize that image for you. But the other really good thing that Squoosh does is it is going to reduce the quality of your image a little bit, which will save on bandwidth, which I'll talk about that in a little bit. But if you notice, there's not much of a visual difference here, maybe a little bit. Maybe you can see in the tail of this seagull here, there's a little bit of difference. So if you want that to be higher quality, you can increase that. But we did resize this to be smaller, so it is pretty obvious that we are going to lose some quality here. Either way, you're going to want to change your quality and also resize it if you want to. And you'll see here in the bottom right the change that you're going to get by doing so. So in this case, we made the image 75% smaller, which is going to be very nice for our users for the website because they're not going to have to download such a large image. And we don't have to worry about necessarily resizing this image anymore because the browser will just show it at that size. So we're doing 1000 and 667 height. And if that looks good, just go ahead and hit download. Now I went ahead and did this already with a different image that I had. I had mountains, and let's go ahead and refresh over here. And I resized this one to 1000 width by 625. So you can see now that it's on the page and everything looks great. But what if you still don't want it quite that large, and maybe you don't want to resize it using Squoosh because maybe you don't know how wide it is going to be on the page. For instance, maybe as you resize your screen, you don't want the image to go off the screen. You want it to resize with the screen. Let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So we learned last week how to add CSS styles to our HTML document. So we're going to do that again. So we'll put a style tag, and we're going to go off of image this time because that's the name of the HTML tag. And in here, we're just going to put width of maybe 500 pixels. And you can do whatever you want. But this will make it so the image width is 500 pixels. Now if I refresh, you'll notice it got a lot smaller. So that's what we expected. Now we still have the issue though of if we have a really small screen, it's going to be going off the page. And in which case we can have a max width of 100%, which basically says we don't want it to go outside of its container, which in this case is just the body. Let's go ahead and run that again. And now it's going to shrink as the screen goes. And you'll notice actually that it maintains its aspect ratio. We're not getting a distorted image here. Our image is still the same width and height ratio. And that's because the browser understands that if we're changing the width, we should also be changing the height that same amount. But if we did want to change that for some reason, maybe we wanted the height to be 400 pixels, we're going to get a distorted image here. And you'll see here in just a second. So it's getting pretty distorted, and it's getting even worse as we shrink the screen. So I would say if you don't want to worry about image distortion, only specify either the height or the width. Don't specify both, because then you could run into some problems. Okay, I think that's the basics of how you want to get an image on the page. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the other attributes that you can put on an image. So the first one is the alt tag. And the alt tag is going to be the text that somebody would see if the image couldn't load, or it would be the text that they would see or they would hear if they were using like a screen reader or something like that. So in general, you want to put in the alt tag what is actually being shown in the image to give the person context. So in this case, I would say some mountains or something like that as my alt text. That way, if somebody cannot view the image for some reason, they'll be able to know that it was supposed to be mountains. And you probably would want to do a little bit something more descriptive. Maybe you would want to say where those mountains were, or what time of day it was, or something to give them a little bit more than just some mountains. But you get the idea. So that's the alt tag. Now, if you have like a paragraph or something next to it, and it's pretty obvious that this image is just supposed to be along with the paragraph. Maybe my paragraph is talking about, the Himalayan mountains. I don't know how to spell that, but whatever. Blah, blah, blah. And that would be our alt tag as well. We don't actually need the alt tag here because the paragraph is explaining it for us. But we should still put it, and we should leave it blank. And that will let any screen readers know that we intended that there be nothing read for this image, and that we should just read the paragraph instead. So you should always have an alt tag. It's just a matter of whether or not it should be blank or if it should have some stuff in it. Okay, let's move on. The other thing, this is actually a very new thing, but it's something I wanted to point out as we're learning about images, and that is the loading equals lazy. And I'll show you what this is. So if I have, let's say, I'll delete it for now. Let's say I have 4 images here. I have my mountains 2, my mountains big, and these were different images that I downloaded before this. Okay. And I'll also get rid of this styling that I put on here, just so you can see how this works. Alright, let's go ahead and refresh. So these images are huge, and a lot of them are off the page. So if you think about it from a web developer's perspective, you don't want your users to have to download things they may never see. And if we open up our network panel like we learned about last time, you'll see that we're actually downloading all 4 of them, even though they may never see the bottom 2 or even the bottom 3. So recently, I think it was last year in fact, they added this loading equals lazy attribute that you can put on these images, which basically will tell them, the browser, not to download these images until the user is close to having to view them. So probably for the first 2 we wouldn't have that because we want them to have those right away. But for the bottom two, we may want to delay the loading of that image. And now that we've done that, let's go ahead and refresh. And you'll notice that in fact nothing changed here, and that's because these files are actually on my local hard drive, so I'm not actually downloading them, I'm just showing them on the screen. But I want to show you what it's like if we actually have images on a different website. And if you do want to do this, you can try it out yourself. You put HTTPS or wherever, maybe it's HTTP depending on your website, and then the website name, and basically wherever you want that image, or wherever that image is found on the website. So if you are, for example, let's say you want this image here. You could copy this image address and put it right there. And that would be what you would do in this case. But for now, I'm going to use the images that I already have on my server. So let's go ahead and reload this now. And you'll notice that it's actually taking a little bit longer to load because these images are quite large. So let's disable the cache again. And our images are not loading lazily right now. So let's figure out why that is. I think it may be because they're close enough. Let's go ahead and put, let's see, I'm going to put a height on these images just to see if we can get those images to load lazily. Okay, something is still not right. Let me try going on 3G. Oh, wait. We didn't put that in a style tag. Okay, let's try that again. All right. Let's see. Something's not quite right here. These images shouldn't be loading because they're marked as lazy, but they are. And off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure why. I'll have to look into that and see. Maybe it's something with my browser. I know it's a very new feature and it's still rolling out, but it should work, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. But I do want to point out this website here, native image lazy loading for the web, and I'll have a link to this in the description below. And basically, this is explaining basically what I'm trying to explain about how using loading equals lazy is going to save a lot of bandwidth for your users. Because if you notice, we're actually downloading quite a bit of stuff. 5.6 megabytes. And we really shouldn't have to be downloading all of these. We shouldn't have to be downloading these bottom two at all. So that would save us a good deal of bandwidth if we didn't have to do that. So that's what it's supposed to be. I'll have to look and see what's going on. Once I figure it out, I'll put it in the comments. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure why it's not working. Maybe I have a typo that I'm just not seeing. But anyways, that's loading equals lazy. So those two things, that's the alt tag that I was talking about, and the loading equals lazy. Both of those are definitely something that you'll want to keep in mind when you're putting images on the screen. Because a lot of times you're not going to be putting a bunch of images one right after each other, right? You're going to have an image and then some text and then another image and then some text. And a lot of times, a lot of your images are going to be at the bottom of the page, just how it's going to go. So definitely something we want to recommend is that we load those lazily if we can. Okay. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is images and how they can be a cause for something on your website going back and forth. And what I mean by that is, let's say I have a paragraph tag, and I'll just copy some dummy text. I like to go to loremipsum.io and just grab some dummy text here. Okay. Whoa. That's not what I meant to do. Let's go ahead and see what happened there. Okay. So now we have some dummy text. Let's go ahead and run this website again. Alright, so you'll notice that my text now is at the bottom of this image because this image is so huge. So if this image wasn't here, the text would be way up at the top. I'm going to take off this style so you can see what I mean. And for just a second, I'll delete this. I'll put it right back in just a minute. So our text right here is up at the top. Now if I put that back in, I don't know if you noticed, but the text jumped from the top to the bottom. Let me go ahead and maybe put a width on this image so that it's not so huge. Oh yeah, I gotta put it in a style tag. Okay, let's try that again. So it happened pretty quick. I'm going to try to simulate a slow network. And you can do that by, if you're still in the network tab, you click online and you maybe click slow 3G. And that'll simulate a 3G network that's pretty slow. And now if I refresh, you'll notice this text is way up there, and then when the image starts loading, it moves down, which is not a great behavior, especially if the person is trying to click something and then all of a sudden it moves. That's not a great user experience. So what you want to do with images, if you can, is specify like the height of the image, which is not always possible. But for example, instead of width, if I said height here and I said 500, maybe let's do 800 pixels. Okay, now if I refresh, you'll notice that it's now just white space, and this text didn't jump around. And that's because the browser knows, okay, this is going to end up being 800 pixels high, so put the text underneath that. So yeah, that's what that is. I would recommend, if you can, putting the height, or there's other ways to do it now. There's something called aspect ratio, which is kind of a newer thing. Definitely look into that if you want to. But yeah, a lot of times if you can specify the height, do that. That's the easiest way to do it. So that is images and how they can cause other problems to things underneath them. So I guess what I'm trying to get across is a lot of times it's not just loading the image. There's other things to it. It's putting the alt text on there. It's making sure that the image loads efficiently. You know, you resized it so it's not so huge, and that you put the height on there so that the things underneath it don't jump around. Those are all important things to know when you're putting the image on the website. But at its very basic core, it's image, source, and then the image. So that's how you do it. Now I do want to say one other thing about images, and I think that'll be it for today. And that's you'll notice that each image has its own file extension, right? This is a JPEG. You've probably seen PNG around. One you may or may not be aware of is Webp. Webp is kind of the newer standard for website images. And so if you see Webp around, know that that's just an image type. It's like JPEG or it's like PNG. But it's a little bit better in terms of making the image size smaller. So if you have this, well, let's just open it up here. We have our 4 images here. Well, I guess I have 5. This one is 3.17 megabytes. This one's 4.04 megabytes. That one's 347 and this one's 1.79. And maybe you can't quite see that there, but when you look at your images in your file explorer, you should be able to tell how big they are. And if you can't figure out how to see that, you can always right click it, go to properties, and it will show you the size. So when you're putting images on your website, it's important to know that you shouldn't be putting huge images on there. Like a 3 megabyte image is not it's not what you want to do. People are going to download way too much, and it's going to get resized on the browser anyway. So that's why at the beginning of this I recommended Squoosh, because it will transform your image. It will optimize your image, and you can also resize it. But along with that is Webp and some of the newer image formats. I'll put a link in the description to Webp, and there's a new one coming out called AVIF. And I would highly suggest, if you are interested in this, checking out this image compression deep dive that Google Chrome developers did about 2 months ago. I really enjoyed it, and it goes into all of these image compression techniques that you can do to make images small but still high quality for your users. So I'll link to that in the description as well. So if you have any questions, I know we went over a lot of things here, but all of them were good. So now you should be able to put images on your website. And next time we'll start going over how things are aligned on your website and how you can position them in different places. So definitely reach out if you have any questions or comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching.